So week 6 of 7, we're doing two things. We're integrating what we've done so far in the course and revisiting, reviewing some of those things because we're in a good position to reflect on it. And then we're also looking at the last bit forward for the next 2 weeks on how we want to make the most of the time that we have. There's interesting research on group productivity over let's say you give someone an hour to complete a task. There's like a half an hour of I'm not sure. And then it gets to be the point where it's like a lot of the work happens when you're under deadline. And we've been kind of in this place where it's difficult to find that. And I don't want to be speaking for everyone, but there's a lot going on. And we're at the point where it's kind of like, okay, if we're going to do something definitive with this, it's time to do it now. What's that going to be? So we kind of have 1 week to plan, articulate what it's going to be, and then 2 weeks to really do the thing. So we do have just one meeting left next time. And at that point in time, it'd be nice to say, this is the little thing that I'm doing that's integrating what I've done to help me, empower me, basically. This is the most I can get out of this workshop, which is the prompt, really, is that how can I use the rest of the time to get the most out of this workshop? In 2 weeks, what can I realistically accomplish using my self-compassion, goal setting, perspective, everything we've done? And maybe the goal is to not do anything or not come to the meeting because that's where we're at, right? So I know this is it's challenging to keep this going, which is all the more reason why it's really important to stop and reflect and be like, what has worked? And how can I use that to do something? I know for me, I'm already started thinking, how can I make this better? What do I need moving forward? That's why, Monica, I was talking to you about a writing group, about having clear and definitive guidelines to get my ass into gear on the things that I need to be doing. Okay, it's a lot of talking from me. The other key part that's more fun is about our interactions with other human beings. So this is the final unit on people. And we looked at connection last time, and this week is particularly on people. What does it mean to interact with other people? So the ideas I wanted to bring in are delight for the other, like delighting other people, being curious about other people, and seeing how people can fit into this goal. So 2 main threads. How do we make the most out of these next 2 weeks? And the thread this week, how can my interactions with other people, other human beings, be a part of that? Do we want to write on this for a little while? Think about it? Or talk about it? Which is the better technology, speech or writing?
I find the writing helps to get the thoughts together.
Good, me too. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, we're going on mute then. All right, I'm gonna get a drink too. I'm already thinking what I'm gonna, okay, good.
Hello.
Hi, Sabarna, can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry I'm late. My phone died and I didn't wake up. Can you just let me know what the
Um, okay, the writing prompts. Do you want me to give them to you really quickly?
Yes, please.
Okay, so how can I use the rest of this time to get what I want out of the next few weeks of the workshop?
Mm-hmm.
What has worked for me in the workshop, and how can I use that to do something going forward?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to be talking about people, specifically interactions with people. So what does it mean to interact with people? Is it through delighting other people or being curious about other people?
Okay.
And that's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Monica.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we're gonna, if you want to wrap up what you're writing, it went a little longer, but hi, Sabara. Sorry I didn't see you come in.
Hey, Sean. Sorry, my phone died.
It's
My
okay.
alarm didn't ring.
It's okay.
My apologies.
So I wanted to contextualize the two big ideas that were in people. We're in the people section, which is about how we interact with other people and what that looks like and how that relates to living a good life, and then how our writing can connect with that. We're also in the kind of pinch point where we're realizing there's only one more meeting and kind of 2 more weeks of kind of work that we can do. And so the question is, how much we're making, what can we do to get the most out of it? I'm not sure how much was communicated of that, but if any. Okay, so that being said, I mean, I'm curious. I'm just curious how, where are you? Maybe that's the better free writing question. Where are we? Or what did we come up with? Thanks, Lee. Thanks.
I think for me, like where I've landed right now is that for me, the realization, I think the values, like getting really clear on the values and then activities and people that support the values, and then sort of and then like being really strict on those containers. So, and then letting the rest flow. That's like my takeaway so far. And then I think there are some people that I've talked to and have set containers with within like, so far in this course. I am feeling like a bit like a dip in the energy, like this week for sure. And I think that also has to do with some like work situation. And yeah, I just want to acknowledge what I'm feeling right now. And yeah, just like putting out there. But I feel like prior to this week, I have, set up these containers and talked to people. So it's kind of like, another, also like noting another kind of toolkit that, this course has helped me develop is like, what are the activities that like help me come back to these, to like come back to myself in a way. So yeah, I think like, right, it's sort of like a combination of all those things where, okay, what activities help me come back to myself, what people and containers help me, like, and activities help me live out my values in a way, or support me in living my values, and then let the rest kind of play out by itself so far. Yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
I really like that as an entire takeaway for the whole thing. And the way that you visualized it as a series of containers where you almost have like, I don't think this doesn't feel quite right, but like a sense of like the values, and then the activities and people that support those values, and then then in that space, seeing what happens, not controlling it, is really helpful for me to hear in terms of all the different, because I have a hard time deciding what of the things that I could be working on and what to do. And I can get paralysis by overanalysis. So I have like these 7 things that I could do, and I almost am like, no, I need to do one of them and pick them, but that's not actually aligned with my values or my people. So I feel like that helps me as a reminder of setting up the containers of time, like really actually being deliberate about looking for those moments of time to do those things. It's kind of how I'm reading that.
Yeah.
to continue to see where it goes.
I too have like a list of projects of like, oh, it'd be so fun to do this. But then I'm like, when I'm feeling like so kind of like wrapped up in other things, like I don't want to do any of those, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So for me, it's like really coming back to that space. And that's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I see people and activities as support for me to come back to those places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, do you think, I wonder if it's helpful about recognizing and realizing that you're doing that for other people too, like you just did for me? And like, you know, like doing that actively, like seeking out how you could contain other. Is there other opportunities for you to be containers for somebody else's, what they need? Is an interesting question to kind of like, because, and it does obviously have to come from a place where your own oxygen mask is breathing and you're on, you know, but it might be, that's one of the interesting prompts this week is what does it look like if we flip it? So instead of doing all of these projects, I'm really actually gonna focus on other people, helping them do their projects. What does that even look like? Is that possible?
Mhm.
And that's why I really like letting it flow, because you just did that for me without even knowing it.
Oh,
But because of this container and this time
Yeah.
commitment that we have.
yeah, this time is definitely one of those containers. So
Yes.
so I feel like,
Yeah.
when this goes away, just like setting up
It's-
other containers for myself.
That's it. That's exactly like, in terms of what I'd like to do. That's how Julia Cameron ends her book as well. It's like, this is what I've learned. Now that I know it's beneficial, I'm going to continue to do it for 90 days. So it's like, I'm going to take this 7 weeks and I'm going to extend it for twice as long. So we have
Ooh.
just done 49 days and I've made these commitments that I know work. And because I know they work and because I'm stoked on them, I'm going to do them for another 90. And this is what I'm going to do daily. And this is what I'm going to do weekly. Variation of that for me, I'm kind of taking a week off of making the most out of my time, which is an exhausting question kind of. And I'm sorry that I asked it, but it's an important one. And then restarting a new one as a student of the next group that starts, so I can get in that space again. I think either of those ways are both like awesome examples of containers that we can create for ourselves. And now we also know this thing, like seeing other smiling faces, helps. So then that becomes like the practical question. This is also, Monica, what I was talking to you about this, that I just had this ping, like there's what would that kind of working group look like if it was more like a, what are the agreements that we're making and how do we check in with each other if they're different projects? What would it look more like to focus on the projects right away and have like that kind of writing working group where like, this is the project I want to create and I'm fucking gonna create it in 7 weeks. So then we should put some skin on that before next week. I think that's a good realistic weekly deadline for next week, is to really actually be like, okay, how am I gonna build my way forward with this stuff? What does it look like? Reaching out to these people for this time, this renewed commitment, and then this also, I guess, I don't know, the other thing that came up for me is the whole notion of celebrating is what we're going to do next time, to actually really kind of mark the wins that we did actually do these things, because it's really easy to lose those when we're exhausted.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, I had a big week too. It was just a lot of that. So that was super helpful, Lee. Thank you.
I'm glad. It's
Does it-
helpful for me to say out loud too.
Does it seem like this kind of visualization where it's like first container is like here, close to here, and then the next container is like a little bit bigger, and then from there you can kind of see where it goes? That seems more of like how it feels like rather than narrowing down. It's almost like we are working out and expanding to be like, okay,
Mm.
who are you? Are you in my bubble or no? Oh no, okay. Now I'm like a cell just bouncing throughout the world, being like, oh, this clubhouse room is terrible. Gotta get out of here.
The way I see it is like sort of like frequency. So like coming back to myself, to my own frequency, and then with my own frequency, then I can sort of create jive with others.
Yes.
I don't. Yeah. It's easier said than done.
No, I think it's a lifelong thing. That's why it's like, oh, you're teaching wisdom. How does that work? It's like, well, we can get a lot done in 7 weeks. But then it's also like, yeah, what's the philosophy book? He's like the one I used to teach at Front Range. He's like, now that we've reached the end, we're back at the beginning again. Have we gotten anywhere? It's like, I don't know. It's funny because you're still doing it. Coming back to yourself, and then, yeah, it's hard work. Sabarna, Monica? Or
The first thing, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm still in the I don't know, dream state or whatever. Is I'm just scared of people, and that's literally the first thing that came out, like fireballs, when I started writing. And I don't think I ever recognized that it is scary, and like the anxiety around interactions is real.
yes.
And I kept thinking about, again, going back to the first two workshops, about how the analogy of the energy exchange and what feels like work and what feels like play is a lot dependent on that sort of am I receiving energy versus giving energy? And although
Yes.
in equilibrium ideally, but it's not. And sometimes you're giving way more than you're receiving, and that can feel overwhelming, and that is scary because not one of my friends shared this Oscar speech of this director, and she was like, her father, Noma Bland, and she was like, people inherently at birth are good, is something her father would tell her at when they were little. And I felt like that's so true. It really hurt, like, hit me somewhere in terms of people at birth are inherently good. But then, all these words happen, and philosophies happen, and ideologies happen, and situations. And we're all molded into our own being. And therefore, how we interact from that point diverges in terms of wants, needs, aspirations. And therefore, that energy exchange is not as honest. And that took me to that space of like how somebody else speaking their truth can enable me, and how me speaking my truth can enable me and also enable others. And that the power of radical honesty. I'm not saying it's always a good thing, but there's definitely a power there of clarity and just, again, like fucking letting go of the sensors, because there's like so built into us at so many layers. And I think that's also where that magic of the morning pages comes in, because you're not oriented enough to have the energy to have constructed those notions. So you're still in that inherent good self, or honest self. I think there's an interplay there. What I would take behind is that take away. That was the first part, and that came later for me. But it was remembering that I can do this again, because I feel like somewhere there was this anxiety that I'm not doing all the exercises. I'm not doing enough. I'm still in the healing phase, or the giving myself permission and capacity and all the luxuries I need, and and that's all right. Like, this is a lot that that brings back to your point about celebrating, that I have unpacked, and that's why it makes sense to see how far I've come. And this is not going anywhere, and I'm not going anywhere. And I can do these questions again and these prompts again. And yes, while optimizing these 7 weeks is a beautiful aspiration, but giving myself the permission to heal and the permission to just be is its own takeaway. That you know what, this time while I'm doing this, and it brings back to the circularity of life. We're living in the same cycle. So if I just use this cycle for what I need most right now and let go of the should statement. The should statement is some like this construct of psychology I'd come across a few years back when I was reading this book by Dr. David Burns called Feeling Good. And one of his commandments, he talks about should statements, and how every time you catch yourself using the word should in a statement, question whether it's harming you or not. Because more often than not, it's creating this notion of, oh, you know what, this is the ideal state. This is what I should be aspiring towards, rather than prompting you. And that's why I even like the word invitation, which, Sean, you use invitations to read, invitations to write. So that's a lot kinder than the word I must, I should.
Prompt.
Yeah, it's a prompt. And I feel like we're kids in our inherent selves. And the moment we say that, okay, this is what you're supposed to be doing, there's this rebellion that comes up and this resistance that comes up. Rather than that, what works for me, I think, is not to-do list, but like, it would be nice today if I replied back to that email of that friend who sent me his manuscript for a review. It would be nice if I took out like 3 hours to do that 1 hour of reading and then write on it. And those prompts sort of play out in their day automatically, rather than saying, this is what I need to be doing today. I may not be feeling like doing all those things. Where's the kindness in that? That I'm telling myself to do things I don't necessarily want to do.
Why am I paying for this? Oh yeah, sorry. Yes.
That's all, I guess. Still a little loopy, but that's all.
I have a lot to say, but that usually means that someone else should talk.
I'm so glad that you said that.
Yeah.
That what you said about the feeling like behind or not doing the exercises. That's definitely something I felt too.
Yes.
Felt like, oh, I'm running behind, but I still have a lot of things to process from the previous week.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's not like a step-by-step thing, right? Because sometimes I would go back to the first week and like, oh, I still need to process some of this stuff.
Yeah, I need to revise my contract again. And yeah.
You know what? I realized I was looking at it a little bit subconsciously, like schoolwork. And I think that's where the training has gone wrong.
Yes.
Because at school, it's like you haven't done the exercises for this week. You haven't done the homework. Yeah. But this is life. So there's no really talk to the homework.
I think that's why a lot of people stop coming. The people that have that drop, that have aspirations to do it. It's like, it's almost like you set these really high aspirations. What stood out to me in that is optimizing 7 weeks is a beautiful aspiration, but it's also a beautiful aspiration to just give myself permission to heal and just be. Like, that's also a nice aspiration. And I really appreciate that you named and labeled that kind of anxiety of not doing the work, because, and associating it subconsciously with school, and like a sense of wanting to be caught up and wanting to make the most out of it and wanting to do a good job, and how exhausting that is or can be. But still, that exhaustion is there because you've done all this stuff up to this point. So it's like, for me, it makes it seem even really more important to emphasize that this is not meant to be anxiety inducing, and to realize the fact that you were recognizing and realizing that, and that you had the insight that this is a looping back on itself, and that it's not going anywhere, and neither are you. Another awesome thing that you said, where it's like you're just now able to do it again and pick up different things on it, is fantastic. Again, that likes Lu Yi's sense of like, just kind of let it flow and let it go. Realize that it's working, which is one of the reasons why I really like these questions that are somehow in the background of my life for the week as an experiment. How can I interact with people? The other thing you said, I like, fuck, the anxiety of interacting with other human beings and the scariness of it, and the engagements that drain us versus the engagements that replete us, which is the definition of like a good, find the work for you that is most like play, was the essay that we went over today in my comp classes. So your activities are like that too. So Lu Yi's activities and people. Who are the activities? What are the activities that replete me as I do them and that drain me as I do them? How can I transition the ones that drain me into being more repleting? What kind of jujitsu reframes can I do? How can I change my environment, interactions, objects, whatever to fuck with that? Also with people. And I mean, man, it's so good, because it is, and also it is scary. Like, it is like, there's some fucking vampires in the world for sure, right? So, I mean, and I'm also coming from a point of privilege of being like a white male that's tall, where I don't have to deal with much shit. You know, not in that way. Not like reaching out to someone I want to make a connection with. Hi, my name's Sabarna. I need your help. Oh, you do you? Fuck that. That sounds terrifying. Where I feel comfortable doing that. I had a phone call with an older gentleman today. Did not feel threatened at all. I probably would if I was in a different body. So yeah, that's important for me to hear too. Kicking ass, Sabarna. This is an amazing group.
Another thing that came up, I highly recommend Women Around with the World to all women and all people, because I feel like it's a fantastic book and everybody should read it.
Say it again.
Women Who Run with the Wolves. So each chapter takes a story, a fairy tale, and she's a psychologist, and she dissects the fairy tale into different aspects of the human psyche. What I learned is the whole concept of predators and prey. And when you said the vampires, it reminded me of the predators. And she talks about how wolves treat their cubs to like live and hunt and to know who's a predator and who's not. And a lot of that also has to do with innocence versus naiveness. Mm-hmm. And how she defined it is that naiveness is saying, okay, there's no bad out there, nobody's on the hunt for me. And I feel like that was so important for me to hear, because I've been planning like solo trips in India, and that's not easy, and that's scary as hell. But anyway, but that naivety is going to kill you, because then you're oblivious to predators out there. But innocence is necessarily not that. Innocence, she defines, as I remember, is not wanting to harm anybody, but also having this radical ability to heal yourself.
It's like coming back to yourself, like being honest with who you are as a child, right?
Right. It goes back to that same space of innocence. And she's
Yeah.
like, while naivety may mean like ignorance and not seeing all there is, innocence can mean to accept that, all these predators are there, and there'll be times where maybe I'm a predator too. And, I'm hunting somebody else, but at the same time, there is space for me to see that and still choose to heal and still choose to live without anxiety and fear and in the wild and allow myself that space. So especially I feel like I'm literally gifting this book to every woman of force that I'm coming across, and it's a tough read because it's a lot of pages, and I tried to make my mom read a few chapters, but it was too much, so she gave up. So now I have taken upon myself that I paraphrase whatever I like, and then I recite it to her without telling her it's from the book. So yeah, fun exercise. But
I want to read it. That's a pretty strong recommendation, I would say. Man, that's 2 weeks in a row where the frame and idea that I was presenting, this time people, I had a naive rose-colored glasses look on. Connections, wonderful source of strength. Actually, also not. People. Probably in my notes, one of the early drafts of this, we talked about who luck. We heard this? Certain kind of luck. Who luck. Jim Collins, one of my favorite writers who wrote From Good to Great, said the number one factor in your life is your who luck. It's a particular kind of luck. It's the who luck. These are people that change your trajectory, who also bet on you in some way, and who provide you opportunities or encourage you. And this idea that life is people, that a big part of it is people. And I love it. We're in the wild. I think that's appropriate. It's a jungle out there. And I do think what's interesting here for me is, again, like this is the other idea I was playing with, is service and ambition. So we are in service to ambitions, or what's it say? Rather than ambitions in service to us. So this could mean a bunch of different things. What are we serving? Is it just us, or is it also these other people? Because if we find people, we want to. What other thing about running with the wolves? I have these entrepreneur friends they always say who I run with. Yeah, I've just trying to been, seeing who I run with. Like, yeah, you want to, it's kind of like they're sizing me up to be like, are you someone I want to run with? I know it's interesting. I feel like, again, it's the value question. Are you running towards this ideal that I want to help you run towards? Or are you just running for yourself? Because that's not really where that sounds dangerous. And don't suck my blood, please.
Are you predator or are you prey? Because if you're a predator, you can be running free without.
I was working on an essay called about endurance predators, or what's it called? They're like the endurance predators. That happiness, like we are like an endurance predator that's chasing after something. Like we are all predators for this thing called happiness. We're going for it. And there's a lot of traits of endurance. There's another word, persistence. That's what they're called. Persistence predators. I knew there was another P. Persistence predators are ones that just basically out persist their prey. So the prey at some point just get tired and fall over, and that's when they get them. That's why like an elk or like prey that are against those, they persist. So you basically don't get eaten by persisting, and you get the thing by persisting.
Or you get hella tired and die.
Yeah, well, that happens too. This is just what you do until then. So
I think there's a
go ahead,
persistence
Monica.
prey too, there's a persistence prey too, isn't there?
I think so. That's what I was just
Like
thinking.
if you can roll up into a ball long enough,
Yes.
I mean, you know, like if you live somewhere where there's grizzly bears, you sort of have it's very easily as to become prey, I guess, sometimes. But like I feel like yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that dichotomy.
The predator
I'm kind of
prey.
looking for I'm looking for the middle space on it. That sometimes maybe you flip between the two. I don't know.
Have we seen the Fantastic Fungi? That was another synchronous thing that happened to me this week. Is the Fantastic Fungi documentary? That's on Netflix, Monica. I don't know if you have Netflix.
Yes, I do, but I haven't seen it.
Watch that. There's your different metaphor if you want one.
The what's it called again? The
Fantastic Fungi.
like fungi, like mushrooms.
Yep.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks,
That
Lee.
fungi as FUNGUY. I'm like, well, who is this guy?
Who
Why
is
do I
this
care?
guy? Yeah. I think the other interesting thing, if we're going on predator prey, is radical cooperation. That species who work together thrive together. And if we realize, wow, you know what, you can do this thing for me, and I can do this thing for you. And what you get is more benefit than it costs me to give you this thing. And what I get is more benefit than it costs you to give me this thing. Now we're living in a house, the cell, and we're partnering in these ways. And that's kind of the theme of this week, the question. What is that? What might that look like? What are those partnerships? So beyond just connecting with people, how could we get a partnership? 7 weeks, workout buddy. Brad and I had 2 good meetings and then I blew it. He wanted to meet and I couldn't, it just didn't work. So we needed to revisit, we're gonna revisit that partnership agreement. And are you willing to again, I do think it's is this providing or not? How do we set it up to modify it if it doesn't? And the only other thing I wanted to say, Subarna, is about if you can be, and I think traveling in India alone is an amazing metaphor to think to test any of your theories. Does it work in India traveling alone? If not, you can keep it. No. But getting in a safe space where you can see whether or not people are trustworthy. So basically trusting until you don't. From that perpetual where you're okay, I trust you to tell me the directions to this place. Whatever that's going to be, that to really actually believe that people are good while also staying safe, right? And not being. But because I do think there's a sense of trust. The other thing about social anxiety, one, social anxiety because someone might be out to hurt you, which is a whole nother thing that we have to be careful for. And that happens in a lot of different ways, right? I also we have a wonder of doing the right thing. So I don't want to fuck this meeting up. I would come to your office, Sean. I feel none of my students at CSU come to office hours. No one anymore. It's really dropped off. Why is that? I should ask them that.
I also think setting up a call seems a lot more formal of an interaction than walking into a room.
Yeah.
It seems more of a commitment, because ideologically we're still figuring out the digital space of being digital creatures. And while there's a social aspect of it, say Instagram, where it's permissible to do things on that informal space, almost. But I feel like especially with Zoom, for some reason my mind always switches to, okay, this is a work meeting because it's on Zoom. Because all my work meetings are on Zoom.
So this wisdom workshop has like an association of the requirements for school, which is the pressure to
Yeah.
conform by a set standard that someone else sets for you, and then you not measuring up to that in any number of ways. And then the work meeting of needing to show up at a certain time where you like have to act in a certain way to be acceptable to your peers and colleagues. Well, that's the bullshit. How do we get rid of that?
No, you know what, Sean? I wanted to let you know something I observed too. Like, I feel like because I got to know you on Clubhouse, I almost feel like this is, or like I feel like this is okay. Just like I feel like this is the office hour,
Mhm.
and then the kind of rooms on Clubhouse are like classes I go into, or like even electives that kind of support.
Whoa.
Yeah. Like I actually get a lot from the Clubhouse discussions.
Yeah, they've been really good.
Yeah.
That's
so
really
it's like
interesting.
a supplementary like electives in the curriculum almost. And then this
Yeah.
is where we come and like unpack and like talk to each other. Yeah.
But
That's
I also think, I agree with you.
Monica was trying to
and-
get in there too, I think.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Subarna. Monica, I saw you wanted to.
What came into my head is like, I'm always scared I'm wasting someone's time. Like it better be time is so precious in the way we've built our societies now that unless it's something I really need to sit down and talk face to face with you about, I'm not going to waste your time. And I was noticing this because I happen to have a lot of boomers in my life right now. They're visitors. They're great visitors. They love wasting time. I work with a colleague who's in his 60s and he comes to work to chit chat. He does. That's his social life. And he's really good at his job. And so he's delayed. He's retired 3 times and he just keeps coming back. And I think it's because for him, they don't have like he shares this in common with my own father. Like they don't understand why standing in front of you shooting the shit is a waste of time. Whereas my generation and certainly the millennial generation and so on are very like TikTok. I have a list of 12 things I have to do in the next hour. You know, why are we sitting here talking about your home renovations? I don't understand. But that's their way. That's their way of communicating. And I've watched as I'm working on my patient and him. I mean, so like, what small town did you grow up in? Oh, do you know the so-and-sos from, and I'm just like, people, we've got to move this along. Like it's a generational thing, I think. I don't know.
It is. I agree with you. It is.
Good insight.
Monica, you're heard. Yeah.
It's
sure.
like my dad who would call for no reason and just want to stay on the phone for as long as possible for not really anything. It's like, what's going on? I don't know. Or no, it becomes like the share and tell game. They just want to share this weird things. Like, no. Anyway.
Or they just show up at each other's houses. Oh, he won't mind. Let's put the kettle on, And it's like, I'm sorry, but when I go to someone's house, we are pre-arranging by text. We are setting a time. We're going to be polite and leave before, and it's not in their vocabulary at all. So maybe that's why I have.
Yeah, we set up text to set up calls.
Right.
And I think, but Monica, I'm going to challenge you there. But at the same time, I feel like maybe they have this permission, therefore, to express and show up that we don't anymore. Because if everything we do is going to be planned, it feels like unless I have something very important to say, I can't block 15 minutes or like half an hour of your time if I don't feel like it's going to be worth it. Because my own friends would expect me to text and tell them what I need to talk about before
we
get on a call. So there's that
Yes.
flip side to it as well of what it has done to us, and therefore the TikTok generation and our like literally the attention span of like 7 seconds, 6 seconds, and what that means for our ability to interact, and therefore feed back into our like social anxiety of like, am I wasting someone's time? Am I expected to perform? Is the interaction going to get me killed? Well, these are separate things, but they feel like the same thing, the same like chemical reaction in our bodies.
Yes.
I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I'm talking about a certain generation in a certain society in a certain, of a certain,
What's so interesting is
know,
it's like a
certain type.
culture. It's like a culture. And I just can't help but say, like,
Mhm.
are we really spending our time that much better than shooting the shit about the weather? Or are they onto something? Like,
Yeah.
are we lost? Because we're like,
Yeah.
excuse me, no, don't talk about that. I've got shit to do.
Yeah.
Versus like, no, actually, I should talk about that and forget about all the things I need to do.
We're so focused on productivity.
Yes.
We really like
Yes.
to the point where, and how many good ideas come out of just that, sitting there shooting the shit
Yes.
and not
How
being
much more
scared to
fun
waste
is
some
that?
time.
Yes.
I think in artist she said something around serious work comes from serious play. How can you be good at serious play if you plan your play meticulously? Like, how can it technically, isn't that like just like flipping the switch? Because then when I want to play, I don't feel like I have the permission to, because that's just not how my social construct works of shooting balls and like literally just like shooting hoops without playing the game or having a set agenda of time span and outcome, expectation of outcome.
Well,
from
and
the interaction.
we're measuring,
Yeah.
aren't we? Like even our play, we're measuring with our Apple Watches and our, like, we're
Yeah.
assigning parameters and expectations, and we can't even play without assigning all of these expectations and measurements to it.
Fucked. Like, what are we, our culture?
I just went through an exercise at work where I'm reshaping my role, and I'm basically saying that we need more time to play, and I'm getting pushback on saying like, how do you quantify that? Like, this is literally happening to me. Like today I had to do that, and it drained me so much. Like I have to like explain play and the value of play and like just testing and seeing what happens. And I'm asked to like quantify and put value to that as a business like case.
You could, I would procedurally, this is interesting, pitch them on documentation and iteration. So if part of the play has a documentation component, so we know what happened, one, we can satisfy that measurement that we should be able to measure what we've done. Even though that gets in the way of play, you can basically still argue that we're setting a container of time for us to act in a certain way. And part of that play is going to be documenting what it is that we do and working playfully to get a new goal or a measure that we can use. So a new initiative. You also know there's the, what did the Google did like 20% rule or something like that? Have you heard about this? Right? 20% of your time is dedicated. Is that what it is? To who knows what or something like that? So there is a precedent for setting some time to just do nothing, but that something that is focused. So maybe that's part of the documentation is how that play fits under strategic objectives. So one, clearly delineate strategic objectives. Two, measure, at least not measure, document what those play things happen with a little tiny bit of reflection time of whether or not and how that play helps or not helps meet those objectives. Executives or leaders love that kind of paper trail. It makes them feel like things are happening.
Yeah.
What they don't like is just a bunch of people playing with Legos that they have to clean up. Right?
Yeah. So would you say that documentation, like just applying that to like our own projects,
Yes.
right?
Love it.
Like it's about documentation rather than like an outcome.
I also
love
think
that.
there's a line that, like, is it active documentation or passive documentation? Because you could literally just set on a like video camera and record it, or an audio camera and record something, and that too technically is documentation. At the same time, you can have transcripts. At the same time, maybe you don't want, like, I work in audit. We're advised to not like have the camera on because it censors people, but rather to have time at the end where we, after it's over, what we remember is what we just type up in 15 minutes as minutes of a meeting. And I feel like sometimes maybe even like playing with the ways we document can change the process of play itself.
That's a good connection there.
And
Playful documentation.
With your strategic objectives, I also feel that that's also like literally giving yourself games to play.
Yes.
So if in that term, maybe a part of the play is actually going back to the kid analogy, is figuring out what games I feel like playing this week or this month, or what are some things that we as a collective can come to that we're willing to participate in. So again, coming back to the Women Who Run with the Virus, well, she talks about this life, death, life goddess, and how basically for some things to be born, some things have to die, right? So big part of that space is for letting die what needs to die to allow for what needs to live to come into existence.
Yes.
And I felt like that is so profound for me in terms of even like time. If there's this much time, even in that much context, because that's a limitation of resource, what needs to die and does not serve me right now? And if that works with like ecosystems and ecology as well, to make space for sunshine on parts of my forest and my wilderness that needs to live right now, to thrive, for my cycle to continue for next time, for choosing something else to die. Because I don't make the choice, somebody else is going to make it for me.
And when I ask that question in real time, what needs to die that doesn't serve me, is partially this idea that I need to do all these things, or that there is like one right thing to do. And that actually, if I let go of that and actually let go of the sense that this has to be anything or do anything, like honestly, just like let go of the project, there is like I can feel like an energy to work for fun, to play with something in it, and just see what comes up, which is why I loved your point, Louis, about letting things flow. It's funny, you put activity in a container, and Subarna's like, well, part of the play is to find the activity, right? Like part of the play is to create the new container. So we're actually like in container design at work. What do you do? Oh, I make learning containers. What? That's what I'm gonna say.
Containers are, I'm also Subarna, what you're saying about what needs to die and what needs to live. I think that I'm just thinking back to project postmortems or retrospectives. There's a start, stop, or continue. Like, what do you want to start? What do you want to stop? And what do you want to continue doing? That's like a similar kind of framework.
Another new thing I learned, what you said right now, Louis, reminded me of, is when she talks about intuition, she says we generally think about intuition is two things, that it's going, when we interact with something, it's either like positive or negative. Let's do this, let's not do this. But there are two more options. One being, I'm undecided, I can't decide, I'm somewhere in the middle. And the fourth option is that this is not the right time for me to make this decision. I can come to this later. That's another part of your intuition telling you something, that maybe this is not the time to make this decision. Maybe you can adjust it at a later time, and that itself is a part of the intuition.
So wait, how is 3 different than 4? 4 types of intuitive response. You're basically saying yes.
You're
Yes.
undecided, so you
No.
can't decide between yes and no. But at the same time, you feel like you want to delay it. I just don't want to
I
make this
see.
decision right now.
I
So
see. Okay.
one is a difference of time or the decision itself, rather than sitting with it undecided, knowing that I have to make this decision
I
right
see.
now. It's like choosing between going to sleep or not going to sleep. I know I need to choose one of them.
Got
I
it.
can't delay that versus something like not yet. Maybe I'll make this decision 15 minutes later.
So 3, engage, I'm undecided, engages with, it means you have to engage with some sort of decision-making process. It's active.
You're
And
still keeping
4,
it live.
yeah, 4 is I'm going to step away from this. It's going to be passive. I'm going to.
Yeah. I'm gonna let it die for now.
That's because
Mhm.
those kind of seem similar, but I guess they are different. One of them still like I'm keeping this live and I don't know. Another one is I'm getting a sense that I should just walk away from this.
Yeah.
And see.
I need to do more
Yeah.
work. I need to not do more work and just let it be for a while.
Mm.
I have definitely been all of those places with my job in the last like 2 months.
Like big picture of whether or not to stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think the way to lean in is all those experiments of like how much play can you get away with? How much can you show up in those ways? Is there another way to ask those questions inside of it? Because it is like to stay or should I stay or should I go? There's like a whole
Yeah.
weird and interesting thing in there.
Yeah.
Do I work harder or do I give up? Is it
Yeah.
time?
And then in the fashion of like wrapping this up, what can I learn? How can I take this? How can I use this as my own personal laboratory for my own personal shit? And by shit, I mean not like shit, but like my own personal experiments or my own personal learning adventures.
Yeah. And when is it time to finally walk away?
Yes. Which
Amen.
I mean, that's really the question. And then the intuitive response is, yeah, I feel like that just makes itself clear over time.
Yeah.
And if there is a question, there's still like what I heard this another in the context. Yeah, anyway, different context. If there's still a question, then it's like still alive. As soon as it's like the decision's made, then it's made. It's a live question, which means you're still there.
Yeah.
And then developing their sensitivity to be like, boom. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for this meeting. So are we clear on what we're going for next week?
No.
Great. What and how are you going to move forward after the course? Are you going to do a 90-day commitment like Julia Cameron does, like Julia Cameron does at the end of The Artist's Way, where you're like, okay, this is what I found works. I'm going to commit to do it for another 90 days. That's one option. How does that look? Just put some skin on that if that's the one. And it's at the very end of her book, right before the appendices, right before the epilogue, last part of chapter 12, week 12. Okay. The other option is, what am I going to do or create? So what is a concrete thing I could make to hold up to the world and say, this is what I did, everybody, check it out. Here's my initial list of possible grad schools. Here's my proposal. Honestly, the ones that I came up with, I also asked what would be the most surprising. I got like a template for the 3 keynote menu to become a keynote speaker that I can copy from professional philosophy keynote guy. That's freaking wild. I couldn't have imagined at the beginning of this that I'd end the course with a keynote speech menu. That's exciting. I also had this vision of doing like some stand-up comedy, a skit stand-up comedy, I'm like actually like trying to do like a 2-minute stand-up comedy bit in here, like with the light, and like pretend it's real, and even like edited some laugh tracks so it's like just stupid. That would be awesome. What was the other one? Oh, right. Yeah. Freaking typing up the manuscript that I was going to do with the original. But again, I don't know, I don't. So all of those come into this, like my indecision. That's like not just what I'm going to do when the course ends, but what can I do like at the end, by the end? If I have 2 more weeks to do something that I can share with you all, what am I going to do? I encourage you to try to do something that you can share. I invite you to. But if that thing that you're sharing is just like, no, I'm making a decision to be okay with myself or not, I don't know. But I do think it's an opportunity and a challenge to see how are we putting this together in a way it's going to help the rest of us, is another interesting way to frame this. So that's what, and then, whatever, we'll still work on that next week. We basically, in our meeting, we're going to present and then use our meeting to refine where that goes. So it technically goes a week after we meet next time. And that final week is just kind of reflecting rest on our own.
So when do we present the concrete thing?
I would try to see what that's going to, see what that can be next week.
Okay.
So if you can try to get a good part of the way there next week, or at least a plan or commitment, because then what you present might happen in a week, or it might happen 7 weeks from now. It might be like, hey, I'm going to get back with you all in 7 weeks, because that's how long it's going to take me to do this thing. So you're basically, the final project is a plan for what you're going to like, what you might do to make the most out of this. So you don't necessarily need to complete it by next week, but you could be like, this is what I did. It's just a 1-page poem that I took a photo of, but that's what I got. It's really up to you. So hopefully, again, you're trying to integrate your own power of leading your own workshop on your own terms without a workshop facilitator. You little workshop birds, fly away and lead your own wisdom workshops on your own terms with your own annoying employees, not your whatever, not you know what I'm saying, or your own boomers that show up to talk to you about the weather. Fucking love that. It's a great essay in there. My students are going to love that too. Don't be afraid to waste people's time. We need to talk about that also. Like, I'm going to see if I'm going to try to write something for you guys, because if you just go into it seeing what you might be able to do for someone, like you're curious about something, try to provide to them some delight, it's not going to be a waste of their time. And if it is, it's their fault. They're either not going to take it or, so yeah, I think there's some really interesting questions there. And I want to talk to you about that individually if you want. But that was the other thing we didn't really talk about, is delighting the other and being curious about that. Which for me is about humility. I have no idea. So I'm not going to assume that I'm going to waste their time. I might actually help them, and kind of radical that, like, it's up to them if they get something out of this. But I hope I'm going to get what I can out of it in a compassionate way. I don't know. I think people want to be helpful. So give them the opportunity to help you. Also, in my culture, my phone culture, you just call. You don't text to set it up. That's annoying. Just call. Actually, that's not true. You can call, you can text to set it up. I'm flexible. But it's also cool to just call, because if it's a good time, I'll pick it up. And if it's not, I won't. And sometimes it's perfect time. Like, I really want to get away from this computer now. Thank you for calling. I'm going outside now. How's it going? It's good to hear from you. That's how I like to play the phone. Cool? Okay, I know it might be weird where you're coming from, but it's not weird to me. Okay, thanks. I'm gonna see, we're gonna try to touch base again before a final meeting, and hopefully everyone will be able to come so we can kind of have a bigger one with that last one. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Good luck this week.